Hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and show you a quick little way to factor quadratics. This is called the airplane method. These are our steps. First thing, before you ever start your factoring, you always need to check this. Okay, this is something you always need to check this before starting the airplane, and that is to see if you can factor out a greatest common factor. Okay, it's always going to be our first step. Now, if it's 1, you're done with that step, and you'll see what I mean by that. 2, we need to find our magic numbers. Okay, remember a base quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c. Well, we're going to go ahead and find our magic numbers. So on top, remember it's a times c. It has to multiply to be whatever a times c is. It needs to add up to be whatever our b value is. And the two numbers that work for that are what we call our magic numbers. Okay, step 3, we're going to start and build our preliminary plane. Now, there's a specific way to do that, and you're going to see that when we go through some examples. You have ax plus one of your magic numbers and ax plus the other magic number. Now, notice in the quadratic we have the ax squared term. Okay, we're just taking that exponent off, okay, and writing it as ax. It's not going to be our final answer, but it is going to help us get there. Okay. Step 4 is what I call putting the wheels down. Okay, putting your wheels down is when you're going to check each of those binomials to see if you can divide out a greatest common factor. And you'll see a little trick with our wheels when we get to a few examples. And then finally, once we divide out our wheels, we're going to go ahead and write our final factored form. So here's our first example. We've got 4v squared plus 23v minus 6. And the first thing I'm going to check my a, b, and c value. Okay, 4, 23, negative 6. Is there anything I can divide out evenly? And the only thing I can divide out evenly here is 1. If it's 1, it's done. Nothing to do. Okay, let's get our magic numbers. On the top, we have a times c. So 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. On the bottom, we have our b value, 23. So you're looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 24 and add up to be 23. If you're not sure, start off with 1 in the number. So I have 1 times negative 24. Well, 1 times negative 24 is negative 24. If I change this to addition, it's negative 23. I need a positive 23. So I'm going to switch which one's positive, which one's negative. And I have my magic numbers here. Now, once I have the magic numbers, I'm going to build my plane. I'm going to draw my two parentheses. And both of these are going to start off with 4v. Okay, I'm just taking the exponent off of that. So I have 4v and 4v. Now, this will not be the correct answer. If I look at this, if I multiplied, like I would in FOIL, 4v times 4v, that's 16v squared. And I need it to multiply to be 4v squared. So I know this won't be the final answer, but it is going to help me get there. Okay, so the first one I have 4v, and I'm going to take one of my magic numbers and put it there. So 4v minus 1. The other one, I have 4v plus 24. Now that's built. Now it's time to lay in the plane. So I'm going to check each of these individually, and what in this first one can I divide out, okay, between 4 and 1. The only thing I can divide out of 4 and 1 is 1. 4 and 24. What can I divide evenly into 4 and 24? And I want the biggest one, and that is 4. The reason why I want the biggest one is because my two wheels, 1 and 4, must multiply to be my 8 value. Okay? 1 times 4 is 4. So I'm good. Now I need to go ahead and divide that out, and I'm going to get my final answer. Dividing by 1 in the first binomial, you're going to have 4v minus 1. Dividing by 4 in the second binomial, that's going to give me v plus 6. And I have my factored form. Okay? Let's look at another example here. We have 10n squared minus 7n minus 6. Well, first thing I got to check out your plane. Don't just take off and start trying to factor. Got to check your plane. 10, negative 7, negative 6. Is there anything I can divide out evenly? The only thing I can divide out is 1. If it's 1, it's done. Start my plane. It's like a little propeller there on that X. 10 times negative 6. All right, A times C. 10 times negative 6 is negative 60. Adds up to be my B value, negative 7. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 60 and add up to be negative 7. Now some of you might be able to figure out just by looking at it. I'm going to go step by step as if I could not find it. Okay, so I'm going to start off with 1 times the number, 1 times negative 60. It multiplies correct, but that adds up to be negative 59. Next number is 2. Negative 60 divided by 2 is negative 30. That multiplies correctly, but that adds up to be negative 28. Next number is 3. I'm going to keep going down the numbers till I find it. Negative 60 divided by 3 is negative 20. Multiplies to be negative 60, that adds up to be negative 17. Negative 60 divided by 4 is negative 15. Oh, that adds up to, I'm getting closer, it adds up to be negative 11. Next number is 5, and I finally find it. So I have 5 and negative 12 are my two magic numbers. Well, time to build my plane. My two binomials, and they are going to start with 10n. Okay, so I have 10n and 10n. And the other part is going to be my magic number. So I have 10n plus 5 and 10n minus 12. Now it's time to land the plane. Got to make sure you have the correct tires. 10 and 5, I can divide out a 5. For 10 and 12, I can divide out a 2, and I need to check those. 5 times 2 is 10, which is my A value, and it has to happen. If your two wheels do not multiply to be your A value, you are going to have the wrong answer. Okay? Go ahead and divide this out to get my final factored form, and I'm going to get 2n plus 1 and 5n minus 6 for my two factors. Okay, let's look at one more. Both these first two examples, there was nothing to divide out at the beginning. So let's look at one that does have something to divide out. Okay, for this problem, we have 9, 3, and negative 6 in my quadratic. Now look at that. What can I divide out evenly? And in this particular one, I can divide each of those by 3. Now, I'm checking that plane and dividing that out. I'm going to create a new quadratic. Okay, my new quadratic is going to be 3n squared plus 1n minus 2. Now, we don't usually write 1 in front of the n, but I just wrote it there just so we can make sure we saw it. Okay, now one thing I always try to make sure of is if I'm dividing something out in step 1, I have to make sure that I get this in my final answer. So wherever I'm going to write my answer, I'm going to go ahead and put that 3 right away. That way I do not forget to put it in my final factored form. Now, I need to get my magic numbers. Now, when I'm doing my magic numbers, I need to use the new quadratic. I no longer use this old one. Okay, I need the new quadratic. So I need A times C. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And it adds up to be my B value, which is 1. My magic numbers for this particular one are positive 3 and negative 2. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. 3 plus negative 2 is 1. And I'm going to write my preliminary part. So I have 3n and one of my magic numbers, plus 3, and 3n minus 2. Got to land my plane. So from this first one, 3n plus 3, I can divide out a 3. From the second one, 3n minus 2, I can divide out a 1. And I've got to check my two wheels. 3 times 1 is 3. It has to multiply to be our A value, or else you will not have the right answer. Okay, and we can go ahead and divide it out now for the 3n plus 3. And I divide those by 3, I get n plus 1. Divided by 1, I get 3n minus 2. Okay, that is called the airplane method for factoring quadratics. Hopefully you find this helpful. There are other methods out there. This is the one that I have found that my students are able to do the fastest and the most accurately. So you guys have a great day. Hopefully this helps.